Hi everyone, and welcome to Geometric Advanced Stock Analytics. This is my first video that I'm ever creating for my channel, and today I'm going to walk you through my stock metrics dashboard using General Electric as an example. So before we get started, a quick disclaimer: I am not a financial advisor and nothing here is financial advice. This video is for educational and entertainment purposes only. So if you like deep dive analytics and dashboards like the one I'm about to show you, I think you should hit that subscribe button, because I think this tool is really useful and can be of great assistance to you in your investing journey. So the fundamental approach I take when I'm analyzing stocks is like a two eras approach. I call it two periods here. So I take my same set of metrics and I compare them across two periods. I define the two periods, like usually a couple of years or a year or whatever it is, and then as I analyze how the stock is behaving across those two periods, I can see a lot of detail about where the stock is heading and how it typically behaves, and if it's behaving in a new way or consistent with how it always behaves. It's quite interesting. So before we dive into all these different metrics, I'm going to show you the first thing you need to do is you need to select a stock at the top. So if you had this tool in your possession, you'd highlight this yellow cell here, you hit the drop down menu, you can type in your ticker. So if I typed in, like, I don't know, NVDA, it brings up NVIDIA. If I'm not doing NVIDIA today, I'm doing General Electric. So I hit GE. See, it didn't take me quite to General Electric, so I have to kind of scroll down a little bit. There's General Electric Company right there. I click it, and then it brings up the General Electric data that I have in front of me. The next thing you want to do is you want to define your periods. This is the period I like to use in most of my analytics. So from January 3rd, 2022 to 1 year ago from today. So today, that means October 24th, 2024. That's exactly 1 year ago from today. And then this period 2 automatically defines from that day, the last day of period 1, up to today's date. So once that is all selected and we have all the data analytics populated, I'm going to zoom in and I'm going to walk you through each of my pieces of information. So Control 1, I go up here and I click, and all right, I'm locked in here. I got my zoom it going. So we've defined our periods. Now the first thing we're going to look at here is the threshold outperformance index. So that's right here. So this is a unique stat, one of the unique stats that I've created that you won't find anywhere else, or I haven't seen it anywhere else. And it uses a couple of pieces of information to create a really useful analytic. So when you know, like over this entire period, so period 1, you can get an average up when the stock goes up and an average down when the stock goes down. From those two pieces of information, you can figure out how often does the stock need to win to have a positive trend. So when you do that analysis, you can see that this stock needs to win 50.3, I just covered up here, 50.3% of the time to have a positive trend. Now you go through the same period and you see, well, how much did it actually win? The stock actually won 55.6% of the time. You can see that right here. So when you divide this number by this number, you get my threshold outperformance index of 110.6%. Then you can do the same thing for period 2, and you see, wait, in period 2, it had to win a little bit more to break even at 50.8%, but it actually won at a higher threshold of 58.2%. And that means the threshold outperformance index right here is 114.7%. So it was a great stock in period 1, but it's getting better in period 2. I think that's a really interesting stat. The next one is a version you've probably seen in many different places about how you're measuring stability. For me, I look at whether a stock goes up over 3% or goes down more than 3%. And I see what percent of the days are either of those situations happening. And so for period 1 for General Electric, it was above a 3% change 3.7% of the time, and it was below a negative 3% change 2.7% of the time here. So basically, to get this stability score, I take 100% and I subtract the total of these two percentages that are below it, giving me a score of 93.6% of the time that it's within plus or minus 3% change. And like I said, I do the exact same thing for period 2 over here. We can see that it had slightly less days above a 3% change. It actually had quite a bit less days above a 3% change, and around the same number of days or percent of days that were below a negative 3% change. And so this overall stability went up. My next stat that I want to show you is something that I call positive trend persistence. Basically, I look at all the 5-day streaks that the stock had over the period in question. So whether it's a 5-day winning streak or a 5-day losing streak. For GE in period 1, you can see it had 15 5-day winning streaks and 4 5-day losing streaks. So when I get what I do to get this 78.9% here is I take the 15 and I divide it by the total of all the 5-day streaks, so 19. So this basically means that 78.9% of all the 5-day streaks are winning streaks. And then when we look at period 2, it's just perfection, really. It had 8 5-day streaks, and all of them were 5-day winning streaks. So this stock is really performing well here in period 2. Let me zoom out of here for a second. And I'm going to zoom in again, scroll down a bit, and I'm going to click here. All right. My last stat here is called percent chance of a future winning trend. You see the numbers here. I'm going to dive into where they come from in a second, and it relates to the charts up at the top, but it's like a 95% winning trend for period 1 for GE. All right, so let me get out of here for a second, and I'm going to zoom in on my chart right here. All right, so I had told you previously about my threshold outperformance index. So basically that is how often a stock is winning versus how much a stock needs to win to have a positive trend. So instead of using the whole period to figure out that stat, I did it over a 51-day rolling average in this chart, and then I plotted how that trended over time. And what you can see for period 1 for GE, that it's really trending above this 1.00 threshold. So that's the break-even point. So GE over that first period is trending quite often above the threshold for breaking even. And so what I do to get my percent chance of a winning trend is I take the trend line, I look at the standard deviation of all these data points, and I do a statistical analysis to see what is the likelihood that future data points will continue in a positive direction based on this historical data in this period. And so because this trend line is pointing up at a nice slope, because the standard deviation isn't too high, at this point in time, it's pretty likely that it's going to continue this upward trend. And I do that for the second period as well. So let me get out of here. I'm going to zoom in again over here and click. So then this is the same data points plotted over period 2. So you do a 51-day rolling average of how much this stock is winning versus how much it needs to win. And every time you're above this line right here, that's a good thing. The stock is winning much more or winning more than it needs to in order to keep going up. All right, let's zoom out of here and let's go down to these other charts. I'm going to zoom in now for here, Control 1. Here, let's go up and click in. So on these two particular charts right here, I have two pieces of data that I plot. I have in orange, up over down. So when you look over a 51-day rolling average, the average up divided by the average down, you can see how much bigger the ups are than the downs. So looking at this side, and you really want the orange line to be above this 100% line right here. So we can see most of the time it is. So most of the time the ups are bigger than the downs. And that's what we're kind of looking at here and where that trend is going. So it's nice to see that the orange line is pointing up. Now, let me get that out of there. The other thing we have on here is win percentage. The blue represents how often this stock is winning over a rolling 51-day average. So we want it to be 50% or higher. So if I just draw this across here, you can see that most of the blue, it's above this 50% threshold, and the trend is actually a positive trend as well. So that's a great sign on both of these metrics for this stock. Let me get that out of here. I'm going to escape, and I'm going to zoom in to this other one over here. And this is just the same data over our second period. So we can see, all right, the slope is getting a little bit less, so we want to look closer at what's going on with the up over downs, and the winning percentage continues to go up. It's pretty high up here now. It's up around 60%. And even though the orange, the up over down ratio is not as steep as it was before, it's still pointing and trending above 100%. With the 60% winning, combined with a 60% win percentage, it bodes really well for this stock. All right, let's get out of here. I'm going to scroll down a bit. There's a couple of more pieces of information. Let's zoom in here on the RSI. This is just a stat you'll find anywhere. I didn't invent this stat. This is basically for momentum investing, trying to figure out, is the stock oversold or overbought, and to see if it might be a good buy. There might be a good buy point for a particular stock. And so I have it for period 1. And then if we scroll out, you can see I have it over here for period 2. Scrolling down now, we have the ever important price per share right here. We can see over period 1, there's a nice little trend for GE going from just over 50 to almost 200. Looks like it stopped at 175 in this particular period. And then if we look at the most recent period, it's a very steady upward climb for GE. It has been a well-performing stock, and that's kind of why I chose it for my first video, to just highlight one of the stocks that have performed really well for me over the last little while. So let's escape over here. There's just a couple more things to show you. I'm going to zoom in here, Control 1, and we click in here. For each stock that you pull up and look at, it's going to give you the price over earnings ratio right here. And it's also going to give you the industry average for that particular stock. So when you select GE, it's going to populate here with whatever industry it is, and it's aerospace and defense. And so that's where it pulls these price over earnings data from. So basically, you want to know if it's a good deal or not, or if it's overpriced or not, and based on its industry. The rule of thumb basically is anything over 25 is a little high priced, but I mean, it really depends on the industry you're in, because the P over E can get really speculative, but it doesn't mean it's a bad stock. You just kind of have to do a bit more research on it. And then 2 other pieces of information. I have market cap, just the size of the stock. So basically, this is the number of stocks times number of available stocks times the price. And then your annual rate of return over the entire period. So that's basically from the beginning of period 1 to the end of period 2, which is today. So GE is, over this period, it's been a 53.1% annual rate of return, which is obviously amazing. Not something that's going to last forever, but it's been a great stock for a while. Okay, let me escape out of here. A couple other things I want to run through very quickly. You'll notice that my threshold outperformance index is either green or red. So I've put in some conditional formatting. If this one is over 105%, let me get some marks. So if this is over 105%, then it's green. If it's lower, then it's not. If this stability is over 95%, then it's green. If it's lower, then it's red. Positive trend persistent. If it's over 60%, I say that's green. If it's less than 60, then it's red. And then for chance of a future winning trend, anything over 80 here, I put as green in either of these 2. And the very last thing up here in the top right, you'll see an overall rating. I have very interesting up here for GE. That's my top rating for a stock. Not many stocks. When I try to run this on the entire population of stocks, I might get 25 or 30 stocks that qualify as very interesting. I kind of have a complicated algorithm for determining this, so I won't walk through this now. But yeah, that's a good sign that it's very interesting. All right. Now, before I close off, I just want to say that in the near future, I'm planning on selling this dashboard or putting it up for sale on a place like Gumroad or not, because I think it could add a lot of value. I want to have it out there helping you guys do your investing. And so, but before I do that, I'm demonstrating it on a regular basis on this channel, and I'm very, very interested in feedback about what you found confusing, what you found useful, what you think should change, how I could clear things up. And so, yeah, any feedback in the comments, negative or positive, but always kind, it's definitely welcome. All right. So just to wrap up, I want to remind you that everything in this video is for educational and entertainment purposes only. It's not financial advice, and I'm not a licensed financial advisor. Always do your own research or consult a professional before making any investment decisions. All right, thank you very much for listening, and I hope to see you next time.